So rivets and sizes for bag making. Rivets are a wonderful addition for bag making. Obviously, they're great for attaching handles and adding strength to strap carriers, etc. But they're also brilliant for just adding decoration to a bag. They really add a professional look to your bag. Buy good quality rivets. Cheap ones and especially free ones can buckle. I tend to use either Emmeline or Tandy rivets most of the time, and they are available worldwide. So let's look at choosing the size of your rivet and then move on to the different types and how to apply them. So the sizes I use in my bag making tend to range between a 6mm and a 9mm cap, and this refers to the domed top edge or the top cap. These ones are double cap rivets, and I'll explain those shortly, but you can see there's a cap on both sides. So ranging from very small to larger. I don't tend to go more than about a 9mm cap. And then the shaft, which is the pin, the shaft or the shank or the post, which is the pin that protrudes from the cap on one side. That comes in various lengths as well. And again, I tend to use between a 6mm and a 1cm shaft or shank. We want to match the cap size to the project. So if you're using a large bag or a large strap, it'll look better with a larger cap. But if you're doing a small purse or a delicate item, it'll look better with a much smaller cap. You can see that there. So the shaft or the shank of the rivet needs to be matched to the amount of layers. So that's nothing to do with the look of the bag. That's how many layers or the depth of the fabric that you're going to be squeezing in between those two caps. So a small 2-layer item might only need something like a 5mm shaft or a 6mm shaft, but a bag with lots of layers like the one we're making today, or that it's quite squidgy, there's lots of bulk there, needs something like an 8 or 9mm shaft. The larger cap sizes tend to go with a larger shank, and it's quite hard to find a large cap with a small shank or a small cap with a large shank, so you kind of have to work with what you can get a lot of the time. So push your rivet through, decide what length you need. You want to kind of push your rivet through the amount of layers that you're going to be using. So I've pushed that through fabric and through my strap, and you can just see there's a small amount protruding there, and that's how we're really assessing it. We just want 1mm or 2mm just protruding, peeking over the top, so we can actually latch the second cap onto it and you'll be able to click it on. And the die you use needs to be the same. So this is what we're going to attach it with, and I'll show them in the machine later on, but that needs to match, that die that you put in the machine needs to match the size of the cap itself. That will avoid distortion or the rivet bending. You can normally get away with it if it's sort of a millimetre smaller. Your cap's a millimetre smaller, say, than the die, but I wouldn't do anything more than that. And really, if you can get one exactly the right size, then do. Two types of rivets. If we're just using regular domed rivets, there is a single cap rivet, which you can see one side has a domed appearance there, and the other side we've got the shank, but on that side you can see there's kind of an indent or a hole in it, and that's what we call a single cap rivet. Now to apply those, the type of dies you would need, is the top would be a domed side like that to fit the cap in, and the bottom would have a kind of a pin on it like this. So you can see the bottom of the rivet, the hole or the indent, fits nicely onto there, and it does make it very secure and it holds it in place well. But when you're making a bag where you can see both sides of the rivet, like we are here, so we'll actually see the rivet on the inside, I prefer to use a double cap rivet. So both sides have a domed effect. So it doesn't matter which way on it goes. So you can see that the side that has the pin also has a domed cap on the side as well. They're both very secure and very strong. I never really found much of a difference in strength, but I tend to use the double cap rivets or buy the double cap rivets because they work for whether you can see it or whether you can't see the back of it. Okay, so I'll get rid of those dies. So the dies we're going to use for these are domed, so basically both sides have a domed indent, top and bottom. And remember, that shape has to exactly replicate the size and shape of your cap, because otherwise it will bend and it will push it into a different shape when you try to apply it. Okay, so that's my bottom one in and my top one in. And this is a hand press. This one is from Green Grizzly. There's quite a few, or there's a couple of really good suppliers in the UK. I think they sell the Green Grizzlies in the US as well, just under a different name. But I found it very reliable. I've got no complaints about it. It's served me well. You can buy lots of different dies, lots of different rivet shapes, and you know, you can usually get your money's worth out of them. They're a lot more reliable than the small tools that you try and apply using a hammer and a tube. They're a little bit hit and miss, I find. So much better off, if you can afford a hand press and you're going to get some use out of it, then do invest in one. So on to our crossbody straps. So we're going to attach them at the side seams for crossbody straps. So I'm going to use 2 D-rings and 2 strap connectors. So we're making this bag for ease and for speed. So obviously you can make these, you can make them from fabric, you can make them from leather and just punch holes in, just punch holes through the fabric afterwards. So thread on your D-ring, and we're going to just overlap that over the side of the bag, just so we can decide where we want to rivet it on. So naturally, we do want to go directly across the side seam, but, sorry, I'll just pull that out, right side. But we don't want to puncture the side seam. I've never had an issue with it, but just in case, I tend to punch the hole just a tiny fraction to the side of the side seam, so literally a millimetre, an 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch. So fold that in half, get it sitting exactly where you want it, and just mark your fabric. Make sure you're in line back and front. And let me grab a pen. So again, I'm using a pen. Don't use a pen, use chalk or something. So I'm going to stay there. Now you can use a hand tool to punch a hole, which is easy at this point because it's really at the top of the bag. So you can get it in there no problem. When we come to something deeper on a bag, further down, then it's more difficult because you don't have much space within there to get it really deep down. So then I might use a bradawl, there's a Japanese tool, I can't think of the name of it at the moment. I'll grab it in a second, that you just sort of twist down and that will make a hole. But usually with a rivet, it's quite a small hole that's needed. So just a bradawl or something, a sharp pointed implement will make a decent enough hole for that. So let's grab our connector, shaft through one side, through the bag, from the back. So you can just see your rivet coming through there. If you are struggling with depth and you haven't got a rivet shank long enough, you can go back in and trim your seam allowances down a little bit, because obviously that'll reduce the depth by a couple of layers as well. And then bend that back over, put your cap on the other side, and clip it on. Make sure you hear a click, and then we're ready to put that under the hand press. So make sure that it's on firmly. Centre the dome on the domed piece of the die, so it's nice and firm. Check underneath, make sure it's sitting correctly, and then we just press. One nice firm press, and there we go. There's our rivet on. So let's do the same on the other side. So I've attached the second side. There we go, our connectors. So it makes that into a beautiful crossbody bag. All we need to do is attach our strap. This is actually one from my own range. It's 50 inches long and 3/4 inches wide. It is much more substantial than most straps on the market. and it's probably the equivalent, well, half the price of the equivalent in stores, because there's no middleman. I'm working direct with the factory. So excuse the quick plug. All we need to do is clip that on, and we have a fabulous, ready to go crossbody bag. So next, let's take a look at adding the tote handles. So let's decide on a position for those handles. I tend to work in thirds. I think that gives the best visual effect. So I'd be working in something like 3¼ inches in from the side seam on both sides. You can obviously have them further apart, closer together. It really is personal choice. And again, how far you have them down the bag is totally up to you. I tend to keep them near the top of the bag, about 3/4 inch from the top of the bag to the first rivet hole, just so I can keep the longest strap available to fit over my arm, because bear in mind, the further down the bag you place the straps, the more you're reducing this length of strap. So for me, 3¼ inches in, 3½, 3¼ let's look. That's 3¼ to there. And I want to have it about 3/4 inch down from the top edge to the first rivet hole. And I'm just going to go straight in with a bradawl. There we go. So you can use a pen mark or a bradawl. That's my first one. Just line that first one up, and again to the second one. Make sure it's at right angles to your top edge. Yeah. So that's my holes made ready. And sod's law has it that my camera stopped working just as I was riveting that first one. So apologies for that. I'll do it again a second time. Here we go. So I've positioned that, same again, 3¼ in, 3/4 inches down, and I'm going to mark with my bradawl the position. Just make sure I've got some nice holes there. And then I'll grab the rivets. Rivets in from underneath. One, two. Do try and, if you're fiddling around on the top here and it's not coming through, just try and separate threads. Don't snap the threads, because you could get a pull in your fabric. There it goes. And then other side of the handle on. There we go, you can see the rivets sticking up through there. And caps on top. 1, 2, here the snap, and then into the rivet press. First one. And second. It is so much easier with a hand press, I have to say, after struggling for years with the hand tools. So there we go, that's one side of our straps attached. I'll go ahead and do the second. So there's the second handles attached too. When you're measuring to put the second handles on, just make sure they lie directly on top of the first set as well, because if you were off a little bit on the underneath side, you better to be off the same amount on the top as well, just so they look even when you come to use it. And there we go, beautiful tote handles. Sew-on handles would work in exactly the same way, and there's a tutorial for sew-on handles on the YouTube channel too, and they can look just as effective on a bag like this. So all I need to do now is attach my crossbody strap again, and I've got a beautiful convertible bag with lots of lovely hardware. And I'm sure once you've used rivets If it's your first time, if you're just thinking about buying a hand press, once you get used to it, there is no going back, honestly. You want to put rivets in everything, and it really is easy. There's also a full tutorial for making this two-piece bag on my YouTube channel. If you'd like to take a look at it, I'll put a link in here. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, please do subscribe to my channel for regular free content on sewing and bag making. And I also have a Facebook board for help and support with all my patterns and lots of bag making chat. So please do join in the fun on there, and I'll add a link in below. Obviously, my products are all available in the shop at spencerogg.com. What are you waiting for? Go sew!